Hey, Walter Sorrells back again. Today I'm going to talk about one of my blades that I've finished up recently, and what I think is one of the most interesting aspects of any sort of craft, which is the sort of dialogue between the materials that you use and the final product. In this case, this blade is mounted in a scabbard, and I'm going to talk mostly about the scabbard and how it's constructed. The blade itself is a Tanto, a knife. It's about 100. It's about 1,000 layers of folded steel. But really, it's the scabbard I'm interested in. The traditional Japanese mounting for a sword or a knife is something kind of similar to this, but this is, I would say, sort of a spin on that traditional type. There are sort of two mounts typically for Japanese blades. One is a full mount, which would normally be used for carrying that blade, traditionally anyway. The other mount is called a shirasaya, which is translates sort of as resting scabbard. So the idea with the shirasaya is that it's just something for storage of the blade, and those are just made from plain wood. So this is kind of splitting the difference between those two things. And I'd had this piece of wood, California buckeye, that I've had for, gosh, almost a decade now. And I'd used a piece of it in a project a long time ago, and I'd sort of been saving it for someplace interesting, for an interesting knife somewhere along the way. And this was kind of the knife that popped into my head. I said I wanted to do something with it. So there's no handle wrapping, there's no manta ray skin, none of that sort of traditional stuff, but it's certainly a decorative mount. So this is California buckeye burl, and there's really nothing done to it whatsoever. I just decided in this particular case I just wanted to let the wood speak. It's such interesting, beautiful, I mean, I'd even go so far as to say this is spectacular wood. And I wanted to keep it sort of natural looking, but bring out all the interesting details. So it's lacquered, and that's it. There's no color added to it, no dyes, no nothing. This is just purely the natural color of the wood. And I allowed some of the little knots and imperfections in the wood to stay there in the surface of the finish, so that you have the feeling of this organic, funky sort of thing. It's also got a little bit of water buffalo horn here at the mouth of the saya, but otherwise it's just a plain piece of wood. Now, here's the interesting aspect of this from a craftsman's standpoint. If you look inside the mouth of this, you'll see that the wood here is not the same as the wood you're seeing on the outside. So the tricky little thing that I had to do here in order to make this a functional as well as a pretty mount was I had to line the interior with a different kind of wood. So while the buckeye is really beautiful wood, it's also kind of gritty. It has inclusions of dirt and stuff like that because it basically comes out of the root of the tree, and so and it's also very soft wood with no discernible grain. So it tends to move and go off in funky directions. So for both of those reasons, I wanted to line the blade so that A, I wouldn't scratch the blade, and B, it would maintain its shape without warping or twisting over time. So here's how that works. At the beginning, I had one big chunk of wood. Actually, I'm going to show you the size of the wood here. The original piece that I made this from was an entire root, stump, whatever you want to call it, that went all the way to here, and I sliced that in half, and it really takes quite a lot of messing around to get usable pieces of wood out of that. So once I had a usable block of wood that is sliced in half and opened up like so, and plain smooth in the middle so that you can put those back together and glue them sort of seamlessly together. Then what I did is I channeled out a channel in each one of those pieces that was big enough for the blade to lie in it. And so then I carved out the shape of the blade. This is how it's traditionally done. You basically just carve out just slightly larger than the blade itself so that the blade is held at the habaki, this little collar here, and right down at the tip, but the rest of it basically just floats so that it's not going to get scratched up. And so you want it just a hair bigger than the blade, but not so big that it can rattle around in there. So once I had this channel routed out, a second piece of wood was laid in there, alder, and then that was what I actually carved the shape of the blade out of. And so it's a lot of real finicky work to make that piece fit in there. Then once that channel's carved in there that perfectly fits the blade, it's laid together and glued together. Then the outside is shaped. So then the same process is repeated for the handle here, the tsuka. Then a little piece of water buffalo is inlaid here and here. And again, that requires a lot of very sort of finicky woodworking, because you have to maintain a little bit of wood inside this water buffalo mouth. So there's a piece about as thin as a matchstick that surrounds the blade so that the blade never touches that water buffalo, which is, you know, would scratch up the blade. So that's kind of the story on how this was made. If you're interested in purchasing it, it is available on my website, waltersorrellsblades.com. Check it out, and thanks for watching.